Hi everyone, it's Kerry back with you today. I was invited by Mandy from Sunflower Outdoors to participate in their Out with a Bang collaboration for the last days of summer, and I was given the prompt of summer splatters. So today I'm going to show you a technique that I like to use for making splatters or splashes, and then I'll make a little mixed media style card, I think, or something like that out of it. So what I've got here is just a cup with some tea bags and a little pipette which lets me draw up the liquid, and then I can drip it out of the end of the pipette there. I've got some very heavyweight card here. This is actually photo mount board, so it's quite thick, and I like to use this because it doesn't warp as much when I use the liquid, and because I'm using quite large drops of liquid, if I use normal paper it tends to warp it a bit too much. So here's an example of one that I have created, and if you look at these splashes or splatters, you'll see that they've got like these little sort of edges on them where the liquid has splashed out around the edges of the drips, and I really like that look. So the way that I have achieved that is, I'll just use a couple here, is I grab the tea and I draw some up into my pipette, and if I just drop it sort of from this height, you'll see like I get nice little round drops, but they're very sort of perfect. They don't really have any extra bits around the edges, and whilst I think that looks fine, I really like that extra sort of splashy look there. So to do that, you need to let your drops, you probably won't be able to see this, but I'm pulling the pipette up really high and then just letting it splash or drip down from a height, and that gives the little frilly sort of edges on the splashes there. So I'm not sure if you can see that very well. And the higher up you are, the more of that splashy edge that you get. Now if you're using something that is extremely porous and your liquid soaks in before it's had a chance to dry properly, you might end up with, see how my liquid has bled around the edge, so it will distort your splash marks. Now this has a right and a wrong side, so I'll try the other side. Actually you can see much more clearly on this one how the liquid has bled around the edges. So if I had those big splash marks on here, that liquid bleeding would have sort of blurred them out, so they wouldn't be very precise. So I'll just try again on this one, and I'm dripping from up really high. And I found it's best if you leave it to dry naturally. If you try to dry it with a heat gun, you might blow the liquid off the edges and then distort the splash marks anyway. But if I bring this one up, I'm not sure if you'll be able to see very clearly, but I've got sort of these spiky little bits coming off my splash marks there, and once they dry they will take on a darker appearance and have more of this sort of look. So that's what I'm going to be using as inspiration for my summer splatters or summer splashes prompt. Splatters, I think it is. I'm just going to sit these ones off to the side to dry. And I'll bring in this one that I have created earlier that's already dry. Not much cleaner on the other side, but there we go. So I have printed out a page of ephemera from the kit, and I think this one was Mandy's kit with the poppies. Julie and Mandy both have kits available if you wish to participate and purchase their kits. There will be links to all of the kits, all of the other collaborators and any other pertinent information in the description box below, and the link to the Facebook group, which is Junk Journal Ideas and Inspiration. You'll also find that in the description box below. So I've got my nice dry card here, and I'm going to bring in some texture stamps. Doesn't really matter what you use for texture, because it's something in the background. So I think I might use this Harlequin stamp, and I'll just bring in my walnut stain. Now this is quite a dry ink pad, so I won't be getting a great impression with this ink. And I just want to use my stamp in a vertical orientation, and I'm just sort of adding a little bit of the texture around the stamps, around the drips somewhere, so that my stamping is overlapping the drips a little bit and going into some of the white area, but I don't want to cover up all of my white space. I still want to leave a little bit. So I think that'll do. So I've just got some texture going on in the background there. And then I'm going to bring in my black archival ink. And again, this is a very dry ink pad. The ink is not flowing very well. And I'm just going to use a text stamp. And again, I'm going to layer over, or my text is going to be touching the other areas of interest that I've already got here. So I'm not filling up too much blank space. And I just want a tiny bit. I don't want, big pieces of text taking up everything. Just layering up things that are already there. So I'm getting that sort of look there. So we've still got white space in here. So even though it's quite busy, there's still a little bit of space where your eye can rest. Now if you're doing this sort of thing and you get a bit heavy-handed and you look at it and you think, oh, that's a bit too much, you can always go in with a bit of white gesso and block out some of the texture that you've added. If you do 2 or 3 layers of gesso, you can cover it up completely, but sometimes just a single layer will push it back into the background enough that it doesn't look so chaotic. So I'm going to be using this image, which I have roughly cut out from the Elements page, and I've also grabbed a couple of other bits and pieces that I think will work well with that. And then I'm also going to be using some of this texture tape. Now I love this stuff. It comes like in tape, like a roll of tape, and one side of it is paper that you can colour with ink or paint or whatever you like, and it's got an adhesive or like a greaseproof backing on it, because this is actually adhesive, this tape. So you can pull this off and you can actually use that as a stencil. It makes a great stencil. Or you can just leave the backing on it, and then this will sit up off the page and won't be flat down onto the page. So I've just grabbed a couple of bits of that, and I'm not even going to colour mine, because I think I can use this around my image to hide my very dodgy fussy cutting. And because it's a light colour, the edges are going to sort of blend in a little bit, but it's not so white that it blends into the background too much. So I'm just leaving it with that natural sort of finish. And then I'm going to use these little pieces to embellish. So I'm just going to come in with my art glitter glue, and I'm going to work out roughly where I want these pieces to be. And I'm just going to pop a little bit of glue on the side, and that will be enough to hold that down, and that means these edges are still sort of free, so they won't be stuck down to the page completely. And then I'm just going to do the same for this one. I'm trying to keep my lines on my tape straight, so my holes are all sort of running in a vertical line. So I'm just going to ink around these little pieces that I've got. And these pieces I've cut from one of Renee's Little Bits kits. Okay, now I'm not going to ink around my image because I don't want that line to be highlighted where I've fussy cut it, or not so fussy cut it. And so I'm going to sit that there. So now I have most of my panel complete. I think I want to add a little bit more stamping. So I've just stamped that off a bit first. And finally, I'm just going to add a few gold splatters. There we go. So I've got some lovely gold splatters on there now. And then of course I've got my big splatters in the background that we did at the very beginning. So thank you so much to Julie and Mandy for inviting me to participate in the collaboration. As I mentioned earlier, all the links will be in the description box below. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'll see you again next time. Bye.